Listen, they thought I was just the quiet office girl who sends the Christmas email. One click. Every phone in the room lights up, with their secret hotel affair paid for by the company. HR tried to blame me. The CEO tried to buy my silence. I said no. If you've ever been screwed over at work, stay right here, because by the end of this story, I'm the one rewriting the rules and they're the ones running. My name is Danielle. I'm 38 years old. And before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening from in the comments. The office Christmas party was glowing with cheap wine and fake smiles. Music and conversation bounced off the beige walls, a little too loud for the tiny room. We were packed into the break room of a mid-sized marketing firm in Charlotte, North Carolina, white tablecloths thrown over plastic folding tables, half-lit string lights sagging from the ceiling tiles. The air smelled like microwaved appetizers, artificial cinnamon and toner drifting in from the hallway. Someone had brought a Bluetooth speaker. It buzzed between Mariah Carey and muffled laughter. I was standing by the only thing I actually trusted in that building, my laptop. Its fan hummed under my palms, the glow of the screen cutting through the soft yellow light. I'd been asked to send out the company-wide Christmas email blast. End-of-year recap, holiday photos, warm wishes from our director. The usual fluff. The kind of task they called a quick favor and never counted as real work. I'd put it together that afternoon, uploaded the company photo from the parking lot, wrote a cheerful caption about a year of growth, double-checked all attachments. I watched the little progress bars fill like they always did, neat and green, telling me everything was fine. Well, I thought I had. "Danielle!" someone called from behind me, probably Jen from HR. "Just hit send already." I could hear the smile in her voice, the impatience tucked right behind it. I smiled without turning. Clicked send. One small click in a room full of noise. It happened fast. Phones started buzzing across the room. Tablets dinged. A few people made jokes about the official holiday speech as they reached for their pockets. People laughed at first, until they didn't. I saw one man's smile melt right off his face as he read. His eyes froze, scanning the screen again as if it might change. Then another woman, blinking too fast, scrolling down with trembling fingers. The projector, still looping a slideshow of ugly sweater selfies, glitched once and kept going. A frozen frame of forced smiles flashed on the wall while the real faces in the room went strangely blank. But the sound in the room changed. Conversations broke off mid-sentence. The music faded into the background, suddenly too cheerful for what was happening. No more laughter. Just buzzing screens and silence. That was the moment I knew. I had attached the wrong file. Or maybe the right one. Because mixed in with the holiday blast was an old email thread from the shared folder. A thread labeled Q4 feedback. But when you opened it, it wasn't about metrics or client pitches. It was about after hours and outside boundaries. It was them, private emails, late-night messages, sent at 1 a.m. on business trips and Sundays that were supposed to be family days. Pet names, little hearts, complaints about spouses typed like confessions, plans to meet at the Hyatt for the offsite. Except there was no offsite. Just them, a married woman from accounting, the one with the neat spreadsheets and the kids' drawings pinned by her monitor, and our creative director, who had once told me I wasn't team-oriented enough for a promotion. He liked to use words like culture and fit right after cutting my name out of a deck. I didn't apologize. I didn't panic. I didn't even blink. My face stayed calm while my pulse hammered steady in my ears. People looked at me like I had dropped a grenade. Someone whispered, "Is this real?" The words slid across the room and hung there. That's when the door opened, and HR walked in. "Jen, why is it so quiet in here?" She looked around, at the pale faces, the phones in hands, at the way people were standing too still for a party. I looked her dead in the eye and said, "I sent the Christmas blast from the shared folder. Everything attached was already there." She stopped walking. Her expression didn't change much, but something behind her eyes did, like a light turning on in a locked room. I think that was the first time I saw her actually pause, like her brain hit a wall it couldn't climb. She was used to managing rumors and complaints. This was different. This was already out in writing in front of everyone. Because it was true. The affair wasn't exposed by me. It was exposed by the system. And if you've ever worked corporate, you know this. Shared folders see everything. They remember every file long after the people who made them pretend to forget. They trusted secrecy. I trusted visibility. I didn't plan revenge. I didn't sit there plotting ways to ruin their careers. But I didn't stop it either. When I saw that thread sitting in the same folder as the holiday assets, I let it stay right where they had left it, and no one, not one single person, bothered to ask me why I was the one managing the email blast in the first place. Not after the promotion I lost, not after the ideas they pitched with my name erased from the deck, not after the performance review that said I was emotionally reactive. Just because I'd asked a question they didn't like. They called me selfish right before they stole everything I earned. They said I wasn't ready for leadership while using my work to impress theirs. So, no, I didn't recall the email. I didn't stop the fire. I watched the read. Receipts appear on the tracking screen, one after another, like tiny gray check marks of accountability. I stood there in that awful red sweater and watched it burn. The yarn scratched at my neck, the tag digging into my skin, anchoring me in that exact moment. The woman from accounting, the one with the soft voice and diamond necklace, she looked down like the floor might open up and swallow her. Her hand went to the necklace and stayed there, fingers pressed against the stone as if it could shield her. He tried to laugh it off. Creative director. Come on, it's probably photoshopped or something. But his hands were shaking, his voice cracked in the middle of the sentence. People weren't stupid. They had seen enough email chains to know what a real one looked like. One of the interns, a girl named May, said quietly, "Why is it timestamped during the Seattle conference?" Her question sliced through the room cleaner than any accusation. That's when I knew it was over. He stuttered something about checking with IT, about a possible mix-up, about getting this cleared up on Monday. She just stood there, frozen, mouth open like she wanted to speak but couldn't remember how. The party fizzled, the music kept playing, but someone turned it down low. Conversations shrank into tight little circles of whispering. The ugly sweaters and novelty earrings suddenly felt like costumes no one had the energy to keep wearing. The wine sat untouched. The cookies went stale on the table. And HR? Jen didn't say a word to me. She just walked to the back, picked up her phone, closed the conference room door behind her and turned the lock. The soft click cut through the noise more sharply than any announcement. I finished my cider, closed my laptop, tucked the USB back into my purse like nothing had happened. My hands were steady. I decided to remember that. They built a system they thought would protect them. Layers of policy, passwords, and quiet agreements. But it only took one moment of honesty, one click, and the truth did what it always does. It revealed itself. If you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this. The Monday after the party felt like walking through the aftermath of a quiet war. No balloons, no morning chatter, no passive-aggressive leftover cookie trays. Just silence. And the smell of burnt coffee in the break room. I walked in like I always did, 8:43 a.m., coat over one arm, travel mug in the other, the elevator doors closing behind me with that soft, rubbery thud that always sounded a little final. But this time, no one looked at me. No one said good morning. They didn't know whether to treat me like a criminal or like someone who had just pushed the emergency button they had all been too scared to touch. I could feel their eyes not looking at me. Monitors lit faces in cold blue, but every time I moved, gaze lines snapped away. I sat down at my desk, logged in. The chair gave that familiar squeak, the one I used to apologize for in meetings. The screen flickered once, the way it always did when the system woke up, and then loaded my inbox. That's when I saw the subject line, urgent, HR, review scheduled, Danielle M. Of course. The words sat there in bold, like they had been waiting all weekend. See, that's what they do in offices like this. You expose something real, something raw, and suddenly you're the problem. Not the affair, not the manipulation, not the man who used leadership like a shield and her silence like a ladder. Me. I was the disruption, the ripple they wanted to smooth out. I could already hear the narrative forming in rooms I was not invited into. Careless, unprofessional, emotional, a risk. They didn't care that the emails were in a shared folder. They didn't care that it wasn't snooping, it was cleanup. I'd been organizing end-of-year documents for 2 weeks. Everything was dumped into one holiday assets folder. Images, memos, team quotes, every file tossed in like dirty laundry in a basket someone else would fold. And then, tucked deep inside where it did not belong at all, was thread A92, an email chain between two company accounts. No password, no encryption, just carelessness, just arrogance. And honestly, at first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe it was notes from a client dinner, after hours feedback, something boring and logistical, until I saw the subject line, "Can't wait for Thursday night. Wear that thing I like." My cursor hovered over it longer than I want to admit. He had signed it with a nickname. She replied with a photo. Not graphic, but personal. Her hair was down in a way I had never seen it work. The angle was intimate, the kind you do not send to someone who only edits your spreadsheets, enough to shift the air in your lungs when you saw it. That's when I understood. They weren't just having an affair, they were laughing at all of us while doing it. Booking company-funded hotel rooms, tagging creative offsites on reimbursement forms, while the rest of us worked late, redoing pitch decks because he said the color wasn't quite right, while she cried in meetings, claiming she was under pressure. I remembered the nights I stayed until 9, cold pizza slices curling in the break room while I tried to make his last-minute changes look intentional, not chaotic. They were rewarded for the very chaos they created. I lost weekends. They gained room service. And still, I didn't say a word. Not during those long evenings when I could hear his office door shut and laughter drift faintly through the wall. Not when I saw them leave together, 5 minutes apart, like that made it subtle. Not until the party. Not until someone shouted, "Send it!" Not until I saw thread A92 sitting quietly inside the folder, like it had been waiting for me to notice. I could have deleted it. I could have looked away, but instead, I attached it. I didn't open it again, didn't rename it, didn't add a note, just pressed send and let the truth do the rest. Now, sitting in front of that HR email, I felt calm, not happy, not vindicated, just very clear. I knew what they'd try: contain, discredit, erase, make it about my judgment instead of their behavior, turn the spotlight until I looked like the only thing on stage. But what they didn't know, what no one ever really sees when they underestimate a quiet woman at her desk, was that I didn't walk into that party blind. 2 weeks before, during our budget approval process, I'd flagged several line items tied to travel and hospitality. One in particular stood out: Hyatt Regency, billed under team engagement. I remembered the date because I'd covered a client call that night alone at my kitchen table, my dinner going cold while I answered questions he had been paid to handle. I emailed accounting, politely asking for itemized receipts, never got a reply. But I saved a copy of that email and a screenshot of the receipt, numbers frozen in time. Another time, I found a calendar block on his shared schedule marked Creative Summit Offsite Strategy, but the same block appeared on her calendar as doctor's appointment. I stared at those 2 windows on my screen for a long time, my coffee getting cold beside my mouse. I took screenshots. I wasn't planning revenge then. I was just tired. Tired of being gaslit in meetings. Tired of hearing "maybe next quarter" after delivering results. Tired of watching mediocrity get rewarded in silk blouses and smug smiles. So yeah, I built a folder. I labeled everything clearly. Not for vengeance, for survival. The HR office smelled like cinnamon when I walked in. Fake, like one of those Bath and Body Works sprays. Jen sat behind her desk, tablet in hand. Her holiday mug was still out, but the marshmallows had melted into a film on top of the cocoa. She didn't ask me to sit. Jen: "Danielle, we've received some complaints about the email you sent Friday evening." Her tone was smooth, that practiced neutral that HR people wear like armor. Me. I was instructed to send the company-wide Christmas blast. Everything I included was from the shared folder. My voice surprised me. Steady, soft, but not apologetic. Jen, you're saying you didn't realize personal messages were attached? Her eyebrow lifted just slightly, the first crack in the neutral mask. Me. I'm saying I used what your system gave me. If there was a breach, it started before I hit send. She paused. Not because I shocked her, but because she knew she couldn't spin it with software updates and policy reminders, the receipts, the metadata, the thread sitting untouched in a shared drive. All of it existed before I moved my mouse. Jen, we'll be doing a formal investigation. Me, of course. Jen, you may be placed on administrative leave during? Me. Then I assume you'll need my file. I reached into my tote and handed her a manila envelope. It was thicker than it looked. I had added to it slowly, one page at a time, on nights when I could not sleep. Inside, printed screenshots, expense reports, my unanswered email to accounting, and one page, highlighted at the top, that read, Anonymous Ethics Concern, submitted November 7th. She looked up slowly. Her face cracked for just a second, a hairline fracture of surprise and something like dread. Jen, you already submitted this? Me. 6 weeks ago, through the internal ethics form. I never got a follow-up. I watched the realization move across her features, the timeline rearranging itself in her head. Complaint first, scandal later, inaction in between. Her voice dropped. Jen, this changes things. I nodded, then stood, buttoned my coat, feeling every small movement like a decision. Me. No, Jen, this reveals things. As I left her office, I saw them, the two co-workers. He was in a suit too sharp for a Monday, tie perfectly knotted like he had dressed for a performance. She looked like she hadn't slept, makeup sitting heavy over the shadows under her eyes. They didn't make eye contact, didn't speak. And for the first time, they didn't stand together. The next email came quietly. No bold subject line, no threats. Just a meeting invite marked Confidential, Internal Review Summary. I saw it pop into my inbox at 7:56 a.m. No chime, no fanfare, just a new line in the list, sitting there between a client newsletter and a building maintenance notice. I clicked it without hesitation. The message was short. A time, a room, an instruction to confirm attendance. No explanation. My finger hovered over the trackpad for a second. Not because I was scared, because I knew what this meant. Things had moved beyond whispers in the break room, beyond side glances and hurried closed-door conversations. This was official now. On paper, stamped with the word confidential, as if that could contain what was already out. I accepted the invite, took a sip of my coffee, watched the little calendar block appear on my screen like a checkpoint. The building was quieter than usual that morning, like everyone was waiting for someone else to move first. The hallway lights buzzed softly, and the copy machine let out a slow hum as I passed it. Even the usual clatter of keyboards felt softer, as if people were afraid to type too loudly. I could feel the weight of eyes on my back without seeing anyone turn. They pretended to focus on their screens, on their spreadsheets, on their design files. But I felt it. At 9:55, I stood up from my desk, slipped my phone into my pocket, straightened my blazer. No one asked where I was going. No one needed to. At 10 a.m. sharp, I stepped into the conference room. The air inside felt cooler than the hallway, like the vent above the long table had been turned up a notch. HR was there, legal. And to my surprise, so was the CEO. He sat at the head of the table, suit pressed, tie perfectly in place. He didn't look at me right away, just clicked his pen once, then twice, before finally saying, Danielle, we've reviewed the situation. His voice was measured, too careful, like every word had already been approved by someone else. He paused, let the sentence hang in the air. Jen slid a document toward me. The pages made a soft, dry sound against the polished wood. I didn't reach for it. CEO. The email thread in question was found in a shared drive, improperly labeled. While your actions caused disruption, they also revealed serious misconduct. There it was, the crack in the surface, the fracture they couldn't smooth over with polite HR language. He could not pretend the thread did not exist. There were dates, times, receipts. He continued, "The board has placed both employees on indefinite suspension pending further investigation." I raised my eyebrows just slightly. Not dramatic, just enough to say I heard that. Me. Suspension? One word, a question and an accusation at the same time. Jen flinched, her fingers tightened around her tablet. Legal cleared his throat and shifted in his chair. They knew what suspension meant in this world. Not fired, not publicly accountable, just moved into a holding pattern where stories quietly die. CEO. In the meantime, we're offering you a severance package. 3 months plus. Me. No. The room froze. The air stilled. I watched his mouth close around the rest of the sentence he had been ready to deliver. His eyes finally met mine. Me. I'm not here for hush money. I'm here because for 2 years, I did the work no one wanted to notice. I carried projects, trained interns, fixed client accounts after their mistakes. I got passed over because I wasn't loud, because I didn't flirt, because I kept my head down. The words came out steady, not rushed, not shouted, just true. CEO, Danielle. Me. No, let me finish. I finally picked up the document. The paper felt heavy in my hands, thicker than standard printer stock. I let my eyes skim the lines, legal phrasing, release clauses, non-disparagement terms. I set it back down, looked them each in the eye. Me. You don't get to erase me with 3 months' pay. You want this to go quietly? Then you promote me. Retroactively. You update the files. You correct every review that marked me as difficult for asking questions you didn't want to answer. Silence. You could hear the faint whir of the projector on the far wall, even though nothing was being displayed. Someone shifted in their chair. They hadn't expected this. Not the woman they had underestimated in meetings, not the one who used to bring donuts on Fridays just to be included. They expected guilt, fear, a quick signature. Me. And if you don't, I'll take this folder to the county. Ethics Board. The Better Business Bureau. And every ex-client we ever billed for a creative offsite that was actually a hotel suite. I did not raise my voice. I did not lean forward. I leaned back in the chair instead. Calm. Still. Like someone who had already survived the fire and learned she did not burn as easily as they thought. CEO. We'll discuss internally and get back to you by Friday. His pen clicked again. Once. Twice. Me. You have until Wednesday. The words surprised even me, not because I did not mean them, but because I heard how firm they sounded. I stood, smoothed my sleeves. Me. They stole my story. I rewrote the ending. No one stopped me. No one called after me. By the time I reached my desk, half the floor was already watching. Monitors glowed with open spreadsheets and design boards, but very few hands were actually moving. No one said a word, but I saw it in their eyes. That look you give someone who did what you were too afraid to even imagine. Some of them looked scared, some looked impressed. A few looked angry, not at me, but at the system that needed me to be this loud to be heard. I sat down, logged back in, opened my project files like it was any other Wednesday coming early. 2 days later, I got the email. Subject: Role adjustment and promotion acknowledgement. I stared at it for a long moment before opening it. Not because I doubted, because I wanted to feel the weight of that subject line. Inside, there it was in black and white. Title updated, compensation adjusted, effective date backdated to the quarter I had originally been promised growth. They updated everything, not because they wanted to, because they had to. My performance reviews were amended. The comments about being difficult were replaced with phrases like thorough, assertive, proactive, words they would never have written without pressure, words I knew I had earned a long time ago. A week after that, he resigned. The announcement came in a carefully worded email about new opportunities and time with family. Some people replied all with polite congratulations. I did not. She took a leave of absence. No announcement for that one, just a slowly disappearing calendar. Fewer and fewer meetings with her initials attached. Her name listed as on leave in the internal directory. And I stayed. Not because I needed the job. I had already updated my resume, already gotten messages from recruiters who had heard whispers about what happened, but I stayed because I earned the right to finally be seen. To walk through those glass doors in the morning and know that my work had a name on it. My name. Not tucked in the acknowledgments, not invisible behind someone else's title. They called me reactive, emotional, too quiet to lead. But when the system cracked, I did not scream. I did not beg. I just pressed send. They thought Christmas would bring goodwill. It brought the truth. And now, when I walk into meetings, no one interrupts. No one talks over me. They shift in their seats. They look up. They wait. And when I speak, they listen. I think back to that night sometimes, to the soft glow of string lights in the break room, to the way she smiled like I was the joke. I made sure I was the punchline instead. If this story struck a chord, hit like, subscribe, and tell me what you think in the comments.